Welcome back to Dear Oakland. Today we have with us Baba Tunde Afolabi.
Baba Afolabi.
There you go. He's a entrepreneur. He's a father. He's a Arsenal #1 fan. Anything else? Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm a father. I'm an Oakland. I'm an Oakland fan too. I love this town. I love this city.
Nice.
How has your experience been living in Oakland?
It's been amazing. I always tell people, when people ask me where I'm from, obviously with my accent, it's easily to decipher that I'm not from here. But because of my connection with Oakland, it makes me want to say I am from here because my dad came here when I was barely 2 years old. So I've always have Oakland play a major part in my life. So, and when I moved here in 98, 99, I just fit right in. And I grew up in Lagos. So anybody that knows Lagos, Mushin in particular, it kind of like fit into Oakland very well.
How do you feel about the negative PR around Oakland?
I don't feel any particular way because some of it is true. I think Oakland is a major city.
Yeah.
And any major city has its challenges. I think a lot of the major city, however, invest heavily in PR. I don't think Oakland does the same. Mm-hmm. I know Visit Oakland is doing a really good job nowadays, like in the last few years. They're really stepping it up. I think how the narrative on PR with Oakland is perceived is the reality. But the way we can change that is actually intentionally trying to communicate the brand that what is Oakland. Unfortunately, recently it's really hard to do because when you look at it, or you look at any major city, you can look at it, from the artist standpoint. If you're talking about LA, if you're talking about New York or Miami, you can look at the artists that are doing well nationally or globally, right? And that becomes the brand of that city. You can look at it from the sports standpoint, when you have Brooklyn have their own team, you have LA have their own team, Miami have their own team, or Chicago, you have all these teams that are like brand of that city. And when you look at Oakland, we don't really have any of that. And when you even look at the music, you go back to the days of the Tupac, it's affiliated with Oakland. You look at MC Hammer, Too Short, you look at all these people. Those are MC Hammer and Tupac are global. Too Short and E40 are more national. Mm-hmm. So those are brands that Oakland need to really start looking at and investing in to bring, sport artists in, even from architectural standpoint. Yeah. What are architects that are living in Oakland that build there's all these ways that we can really push up what Oakland is to intercept the PR, but I don't think we're doing a good job at that. Sorry, I'll go along.
Mm-hmm. I guess, just to piggyback off that last question, you said that we can have sports, we can bring more positivity to Oakland, we can capitalize more on having an anchor, like something that people can cheer for, something that people can be positive about. Do you think that there's any potential during All-Stars weekend to capitalize on that, to potentially have a sports team back here, to potentially get that in the works?
The good thing is, in so many ways, Warriors is kind of loyal to Oakland. Mm-hmm. I think they would do something in Oakland. I think there will be some activities in Oakland. So we're going to get benefit of that, just the sheer relationship between, not necessarily San Francisco, just Oakland and Warriors. And I think the owners of Warriors felt like they did Oakland dirty by moving. I can sense it through their efforts to try to give back to Oakland, naming it, their official nickname is the town, right? Yeah. So I think they're doing their best to still stay connected with Oakland. So All-Star, I think, just the fact that we are the coolest in the Bay, we are the cultural center of the Bay when you talk about the urbanized community, when you talk about the diversity element of it, I think we're going to benefit greatly. As a business owner, I'm definitely gearing for that. So I hope everybody else is getting ready for that.
Yeah.
And then what do you think outsiders get wrong about Oakland? And how would you describe the city to someone who's never been here before?
What do they get wrong? Because I'm not outside, I can't speak on that. I'm an insider, so I'm biased. I'm biased about my city. So whatever they say, it's their reality, and I'll take it at face value. That's whatever their narrative about Oakland. The second question is what?
How would you describe the city to someone who's never visited?
How I would describe Oakland is it's probably the only city in the United States or in California that's able to be a major city and still have that town mentality, which is a double-edged sword in a way. It's a curse and a blessing. It's a blessing in the sense that how major cities are very fast.
Yeah.
There's no connection. I always describe Oakland like this, and I'm sure once I describe it, everybody will get it. New York, it's like the straight line. Everybody is going opposite each other, right?
Yeah.
San Francisco is the same thing. LA is probably the same thing, and Miami, definitely. Chicago. When you come to Oakland, we are a revolving city. Yeah. We are like an ocean. Yeah. It's like we are like this. We evolve. So everybody in a way kept meeting each other some way or form. So we connected that way. So I think that's what people get wrong about. The way I can describe it is that it's a balance of both worlds, meaning it's a city, it's a town, and it's a city at the same time. Finding a perfect balance is probably the struggle that Oakland is having, because as somebody that's very entrenched in the, now entrenched in the political scene, which I have not before, particularly in the art, culture, and business, I see the struggle from the business standpoint, from artist standpoint. There was a time where Oakland artists was roaming free, that were able to do a lot of stuff. Then overnight, there was all this massive policy. And I think that stemmed from, there's something called the ghost ship tragedy that happened. There was a lot of artists. Fortunately, I have a few friends that was in that got, the house burned down, and I think 35 people died.
Whoa.
I think that's, it was huge. It was a lot.
Like 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think, about that. 2 years or so before pandemic happened.
Yeah, think about it.
So coming out of that, there was a lot of, the reaction from the city hall was more of a more policy and codes and how bidding. I mean, I used to run something called Suru Basement Series, where we have different indie artists come and just jam out in basement of my shop, and we have to stop because of liability. I think those.
I have a question. What liabilities are associated with having an instrumental jam? Like which
Yeah,
ones?
I mean, because trust me, I've built out. I've built out space. I've rent from small landlord that big landlord. I think America in general, I think insurance is a big factor.
Yeah.
And the sad part is if whatever you got your insurance on, which I think a lot of us have experienced, then they bring out this fine print in your policy that you didn't even pay attention to, and why they're not going to cover.
Yeah.
I lost $28,000 when there was a flood in that same basement, and I have an insurance, and they're like, well, you have to be a pipe bust for us to pay for this. It's a natural cost because the basement, there was water that was able to sink in. It was a whole lot of crap that it was telling us. So that was why. I'm hoping that kind of explain what.
So, okay, we'll probably dive into more about your experience as an entrepreneur, but you said your dad is the one who moved here ultimately from Nigeria. So what keeps you in Oakland?
What keeps me in Oakland, and the crazy part is this, it's not for lack of not trying. When I graduated college, I almost moved to New York and Chicago. I didn't want to sit here because I don't want, regardless, I'm proud of my age.
Ageless.
No, I love my age, man. So I almost moved to New York and I almost moved to Chicago.
Yeah.
I love Chicago because of architectural landscape and the whole idea of the suburb and the city. And again, probably Chicago is in some way, I mean, it's bigger than Oakland. You can see the resemblance, the correlation between Oakland and Chicago because they have a huge urban space, and there's a lot of black people that are very ingrained in Chicago. I would actually argue that the image of Chicago, it's black. But when you go there, you can see the two worlds from when you're in the suburb and when you're in the city. And I love that duality. So I went to Chicago to play soccer in 2003, and I fell in love with the city. And I went like towards the end of the summer. So when I was planning to move there, I went there in, I think, September, October, and the wind, and I'm like, oh, no.
The Windy City.
Oh, yeah,
it's
the Windy City is real.
Yeah.
So I was like, so then I went to New York, and what got me out of, that didn't make me move to New York was the smoke everywhere, at that time, like you smoke everywhere, and I'm not a smoker, I'm not a drinker, so what kept me in Oakland is the fact that I am the second generation immigrant that moved to Oakland, and I think Oakland did well for my dad. I mean, he had a cab business, he had an insurance brokerage, he dabbled in some other business, and I have step brothers and sisters that were born and raised in Oakland, so I have parents here, I have aunties, and everybody's here. Now, during the gentrification of the early 2000s, a lot of them moved to like, Sacramento, Antioch, Brentwood. So I've had those histories. So, and for me, coming from Oakland and knowing what Oakland is, I felt like Oakland haven't even tapped its real potential.
Yeah.
So, because when you look at other cities, I felt like it's controlled by a particular group. Oakland hasn't have that, and in a way there's a lot of pockets that also intertwine. You go, we all know West Oakland is largely African American, and when you go to like the Fruitvale district, you see a lot of Latino Mexicans that operate there. You go between the downtown and that area, you see a lot of Asians. I mean, we have our own Chinatown. A major city, in America have Chinatown, right? Yeah. So, and I don't think a lot of city can boast that. Even in California, you talk about San Francisco, you talk about Oakland and maybe LA, not a lot of city can boast that they have their own Chinatown. So I think when you understand all of that, it's compelling to stay. And I always joke that Oakland is the only city where you can have an American breakfast, have a Chinese lunch, and then have an African dinner.
That's true.
And they will all be authentic. So that the culture and the artists and the fact that it's still trying to find its bearing in a way make me stay.
Yeah. What keeps you excited about what you do, and what challenges do you face as an entrepreneur?
What keeps me excited is the future. They said the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. Yeah. And I feel like in Oakland, there's always an opportunity to always plant, and understanding that it's going to bear the fruits. The unfortunate part is there's an external factor that affects those things. And we're seeing it right now, where before pandemic, a lot of people, including myself, bet on Oakland heavily. And I know a lot of people would like to say pandemic. To me, as somebody that's really, anchored here and really participate in Oakland, I would say no. We had a misstep, and that misstep is what played out in our political space. Because the trajectory that we were going during the, leading to the pandemic, of course, there was a lot of struggles, but I think the pandemic really exposed and exacerbated a lot of issues in the city hall in particular that eventually affect the artist community, affect the business community, affect the family dynamic. So for me as an entrepreneur, we love challenges. Yeah. And like I said earlier, knowing that Oakland haven't really found its roots, I think there's endless possibility, and that excites me about Oakland. Like, I want to be that 70-year-old that's gonna be like, I know when that building was built. I know when that business moved there. I know when. So the reality is, you can't say the same thing about New York. You can't say the same thing about LA, because they're already developed. I recently have a sting at politics, as you guys know, and one of my research was Oakland have 4,000 empty space to build on. As a major city, that's amazing. That means we are not even tapping into. We haven't maximized our land, because you go to other areas, they're talking about, oh, I'm going to sell you my roof. Like we still have room to build. So all of those things excite me. And for me, what I do as an entrepreneur, I've become a serial entrepreneur 11 years ago. I stopped working because when I was working in corporate America, I have one or two things that I was doing as a business person, but I really focused on entrepreneurship 11 years ago. And for me, I think while there's a lot of challenges, Oakland also have a lot of resources, because you see a lot of people doing it. When you are in a space, I think the Bay Area in general, kind of like help and help entrepreneurs feel welcome compared to other area where everything is very traditional. You're working in the bank, you work in the tech, you work, everything. Everybody is very, like, you focus on your practice. You're an engineer or whatever. In Oakland, everybody's trying to create something. So, and I enjoy that. I enjoy the challenges every day. I always say, as an entrepreneur, every hour is 9 a.m. Every day is a Monday.
So what does community look like for you in Oakland, and is there anything you would change about Oakland?
Community for me in Oakland means meeting new people and letting them understand that you are for Oakland and giving them every tool they need. A perfect example is, I've met people that maybe they're going somewhere and they get off the wrong train and they don't know anything about Oakland, and making it my mission to make sure that I get them back right, because that might be the only experience they have about Oakland, right? And I want to leave them with that positive experience. That's just something that I do. So also, there's been a lot of people that have other negative experiences, and that will be it. So as a resident of Oakland, I take myself as an ambassador. So I want to do everything that I do every single day. I have to reflect what Oakland is, the hospitality. I mean, they say Southern hospitality is because people in the South do take care of everybody. They take care of people that come in. So I think there's an opportunity for us to have that Oakland hospitality where we just become homey, just by virtue of we meet at the bar or we meet in a crossroad, and you ask me a question and you feel comfortable enough to ask me that question, and I'm able to give you that answer. I hope that, explain. If you repeat that, I think I'm missing something.
Yeah. So
community, right?
Well, yeah. So it's a two-part question. What does community look like for you in Oakland? And then secondly, is there anything you would change about Oakland?
So for me, that's community. And if there's anything that I would change in Oakland, is for sure the political space.
Yeah.
I think we need to change. I think the political space, City Hall in my opinion, is the biggest enemy for Oakland, because there's a lot of amazing creative. I say this about, like, I have friends that have moved out. And they felt like they're doing well. I mean, doing well to me, in a sense, you can look at it from monetary standpoint, you can look at it from production standpoint. As an entrepreneur, I've been blessed to build 3-4 businesses. That is a win on its own.
Yeah.
Because I always, like when I mentor youth, I always tell them realization is the most underrated skill set. To realize that you don't want to be in a space. It's a blessing on its own. There's a lot of people that's in a space, they trap and they have no realization, and they stay there forever, right? They said if you put a fish in a pond and the current in that pond become their mentality, right? But they don't understand that if if you put them in the ocean, they can swim far, right? The pond become their limits. So I feel like for us in Oakland, we really, if I would change anything, is how the city hall interact with the business community, the art and culture space, and even the business environment. Because the reality is, I believe that a lot of investors are worried about Oakland.
Yeah.
So it's hard for a lot of investors to bet on Oakland. I've presented all the way to people in London, to people in Dubai, to people back home in Nigeria, and it's like they cannot pinpoint, Oakland. They look at San Francisco, they're excited about San Francisco. I'm like, trust me, you buy property here, there's a chances of it being, there's room to grow.
Yeah.
Compared to San Francisco, $20 million homes, the growth might be, smaller, But look at New York. New York is expensive because they don't have anywhere to build. People are still buying there, but you're buying at a higher rate compared to Oakland. So if there's anything I would change, I would say there need to be a more business-focused mindset in the city hall to see Oakland as a business. And the reality is, the government would like to think they're not, but yet you take tax, and that tax is your income to run what you need to run.
Yeah.
So if there's anything I would change, is the way our political space is set up.
Perfect segue to the next question, but
quickly before I get to that question, you're Nigerian, and you talked about wanting to build a sense of community and wanting to show people kindness as you meet them, and so when they come back to Oakland, they have that memory of somebody treating them with kindness, treating them well. Is there anything about tribalism or community or the way that you were socialized in Nigeria that you'd like to see adopted here in Oakland?
I mean, that's going to be tough. I haven't said this on camera, but yeah, a lot of us Nigerians and African in particular, we go by tribes.
Sure.
We come here and we
Isn't
become...
that gang culture out in Oakland? Are we not talking about the same thing?
No.
Call it what you want.
Yeah, but so it's as human beings, there's always a relationship, right? Mm-hmm. So I think for me, Oakland, the diversity in Oakland, to be honest with you, I think it works well.
Yeah.
I would say it works well. You have to try hard not to see people that look different than you, and engage with people that that go to restaurant. The sad part is I've been to San Francisco and it's utterly, that's what it is.
You can go to the restaurant and you'll see a lot of
same, right?
We coexist here very well.
So so in that sense, I think I'm struggling with the question to say, I don't see it. I think because Oakland is very receptive to people coming in. So I think we're doing a great job at that. There's a lot of Nigerians feel connected to Oakland.
Yeah.
And it's because honestly, Lagos, it's much like Oakland. It's slower, but it's much like these challenges and struggles. Again, government mismanagement is what Nigeria struggle with. Particularly in Lagos, we struggle with that. But there's a lot of people that are hungry. They want to do good. There's a lot of creatives. There's a lot of businesses, owners that are taking risks in Lagos and in Oakland. So I think there's a lot of similarity there.
You recently ran for City Council, District 3. Can you tell us why you decided to run and what the experience was like running?
The reason why I decided to run was because I felt like the business community does not have a voice in City Hall. And I want to bring that voice out. And frankly, that's what I heard. And one of the things that came out of my running, it's also from texts and conversations that I have with people, is like, wow, I never see it like that. So I was able to bring that lens into the conversation. And I think in one of our forums, I even have to go and write an essay about how business is everything. Yeah. People work for mom and pops that pay taxes. Yeah. The money they earn from that, they use it to pay rent and the landlord pay property tax. Like Oakland are so huge on pass-through tax. Like you look at all the measures are funded by pass-through taxes, right? And every single person that work in Oakland, majority of them live in Oakland, or even if they live elsewhere, guess what? They pay, even they work elsewhere, they're paying the landlords so that they can pay those taxes. So for me, it's a shame that a lot of city council would say they support small businesses, but I think, yeah, you can, but it doesn't reflect in the actions and policies that's been put in place.
Sure.
And I literally have a 6 point that I feel like they can really support businesses, and I'm hoping, of course, I'm not the winner. I'm hoping to collaborate and whichever way I can to really bring that to fruition, because the reality is this. One of the things that I believe Oakland is struggling from is that there's a lot of outsiders looking in. Mm-hmm. They want to invest. Mm-hmm. They really want to be part of this culture. But when they see what's going on, they're like, just for reference, I was in, I think 2022 November, I was in the middle of a deal to really make Mushin in particular what we want to make it to be. And the potential investor live in London. Yeah. And they were looking at, of course, everyone that lives outside of US, they watch CNN the most. And there was a story about looting and all of this stuff that was going on. And of course, mainly they were talking about San Francisco. Yeah. But San Francisco Bay Area. And that affected me. And of course, it's happening in Oakland. And you can't lie to investors. Like, you got to give them the spiel, Yeah. There's something called SWOT analysis, your strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. And you have to give them the whole, so that you don't take their money and then all these issues. It weakens you as an entrepreneur that, you didn't know that was going to happen. So the sad part is a lot of the thing that the city hall does not understand, like it affects. If you affect me as a small guy, imagine people that want to invest hundreds of $millions. Yeah. They take those into effect. They're looking at the mayors like, okay, they need to look at that. What's the shift? Can we predict? If all those things are not in play for them, doesn't sit well with them, they look at their SWOT analysis, and one of the threats is the government. Yeah. It's a problem. Yeah. The reason why people invest in the United States is because they understand our democracy will always be the same. It's predictable to some degree. Yeah. If people cannot look at the city hall and say, okay, we can predict what's going to happen or have trust in the leadership, then they're not going to invest. It affected me. And I'm not talking about hundreds of thousands. I'm talking about, as small as I am, in multiple millions that I could have got as an investment. Yeah. So, yeah. So
you ran for District 3. What does that consist of? Which areas?
So District 3, I just say, is the commercial hub of Oakland. Yeah. 80%, or a little over 80% of the businesses that are in Oakland operate in District 3. And that's the part, it's Adams Point, which is like the Grand Avenue, all the way to downtown Oakland, downtown and uptown corner. This is the way I say it. I mean, if you pull out your map, just look at the MacArthur Avenue all the way to Emeryville. That MacArthur Avenue all the way to Emeryville. Look at the Lakeshore all the way to Jack London. Okay. And Jack London all the way to West Oakland. So so that's District 3.
So West Oakland.
Without Chinatown, though.
Yeah. West Oakland, Jack London,
yeah.
All that. That's like kind of a little bit more residential. So wouldn't it be beneficial to have a separate city council candidate just for downtown, because its majority of it is small business owners?
And I say that in my campaign. When I look at it, I think there need to be two city council or just create. We have
district.
Yeah, we have 7 district and at large. Yeah. If you ask me, I will get rid of at large and make another, like
a sub,
or create another one. Yeah. So you have a 9 district. You can keep at large and create additional ones. So that way you have, because right now the way we have it, because we have 8, if there's a tie, the mayor comes in to be the tiebreaker. So you might as well just, if you keep at large, make sure that the business corridor have its own council member, and then you have 9 council members. I think that should happen, to be honest with you, because trying to balance the West Oakland needs and the downtown needs can be a challenge. And one of the things somebody said to me is like, there's never been a council member that's able to balance the two, because you often lean towards downtown and West Oakland get neglected, or you lean towards West Oakland and downtown get. But here's what I'm saying. To me, I think West Oakland have an opportunity to grow, to be its own thing. Like, I want to go to West Oakland and know that I can only have that experience in West Oakland. I want to go to downtown and know that, okay, I can have this experience, because if you go to places like District 2, they have the Glenview, they have that little area on Lakeshore. That's their business corridor. Everything else is. But I think West Oakland have an opportunity that we can actually have a huge business corridor intertwined with, it's like Chelsea in New York, It's not necessarily downtown, but there's a lot of businesses in Chelsea,
Okay, so we talked about your city council experience, but you had a small business, Suru, it was your clothing line, it was a barber shop, and then as well as Mushin, I guess we could call it a bar restaurant. So can you tell us the origin story of both Suru and Mushin, and just what it's been like being a small business owner in Oakland? And then I have a second question.
Okay. So, the origin of Suru, actually, it's funny. I actually started Suru in Japan.
Oh, cool.
In 2007. So and the crazy experience about Japan was, that was my first time out of my Western African culture. And when I say that is, I grew up in Nigeria. We are colonized by England. So when you grow up in Lagos, you tend to have that. And my mom actually lived in London for a little bit while my dad was here, throughout when I was in elementary school to my primary school. So my mom was going in and out of London. So I have that dual, I have the American, I have the British, and my Nigerian experience. So that's been my culture. So when I left Nigeria, I went to France for a little bit, then I came here. Not like I didn't live in France, but I was just there to visit an uncle. Then I came here. So in a way, I always say I have my African and Western culture. So going to Japan was my first time outside of my element, and that was the first time I actually felt connected, because of the similarity between the Japanese culture and my Yoruba culture. I'm Yoruba. So, and I was dating a Japanese girl at the time. So Suru, whenever the whole idea of having patience when you have a two culture coming together, and my mom always say, oh, you just have to be patient or something like that. So I kind of build the brand off of like, okay, Suru, bringing two culture together. That's what, so Suru in Japanese means to do. In Yoruba it means patience. So when I was in grad school, my second semester, quarter, they told us to create a business that solves social issues. So I created a clothing company that promotes diversity.
Okay.
So the whole concept was like Suru, to do patience, to understand each other's culture, embrace diversity. Let me tell you, it took me 4 years to be able to come up with that. It took me 4 years to be able to come up with that. When people say, what's Suru? Suru as a brand is, it means to do patience, to understand each other's culture and embrace diversity.
Yeah.
So what I just said, it took me 4 years to come up with that. So that's what Suru is. And during the time that we had Suru, I was 2008, I started, filling with the brand. 2009, we launched it. I think by 2011, Occupy Wall Street happened and Occupy Oakland started. And that led to what we have now, where there was a lot of, because 2008 was the housing downturn, right? I lost property during that time. So there was a lot of empty space. And during that time, we started something called Art Crawl, which is now First Friday. So we were all just curating. I was in Old Oakland. I was managing a nightclub called Air Lounge at the time. Anybody that's 35, between 30, I would say between 35 or maybe early 30 to like 50. They probably know what Air Lounge was in Oakland, because you go back 2001, they shut down all the bars in Oakland because there was a lot of gunshot. There was a lot of gun violence in the early 2000 years in Oakland. So every night, every weekend, there's always, in Jack London, that everybody finds to be very nice and premium now. There used to be probably 7, 8 bars, like nightclub. Even like underage bar was in somewhere.
Underage bar?
Yeah, like if you are 18 and over, you can go there.
Wow.
I think it was called Mingus. It used to be in Jack London back then. There's Oak Tree, there's, Q's Lounge, there's all these on Broadway. There's I could keep naming, there was a lot of variety, but the problem is there's a lot of gang issues, and there's always a gun related. I actually saw somebody empty AK-15 in an Escalade. I think that was the last of it. They had to shut down a lot of those bars. Yeah. And so 2003, 2005 is when we started coming out of that. And Air Lounge was one of the first, a ultra premium bar in Old Oakland. And it was owned by two of my friends. They older than me, and I was like the kid that was just on the street. I was promoting parties. So I was privileged enough to manage that, the night space. So that during that time, because of the Wall Street, going back to what I was saying, because of the Occupy Wall Street and the housing crash, Oakland was left just like what we're seeing right now. Yeah. Everywhere was decimated. I think that's even when they start revitalizing Fox Theater. Mm-hmm. So doing Fox Theater kind of helped all of that area, and we started doing the art crawl, which was around I think from where King Folk is right now to the 27. There's a lot of empty space that a lot of art community kind of occupy, and everybody was just kind of doing their own thing.
Yeah,
it was, I think, when the Occupy Wall Street happened, that kind of bring out a different animal in people, because in that, I think it was 2011 that happened. I think by 2012, 2013, we did something called In the Black, and it was our counter to what did we just have recently? Black Friday. Mm-hmm. So for now, supporting the big brand. So we did In the Black. It was led by it was mainly women, Effie Tesfaun, Rachel Kante, Alana Rayford. There was a lot of, I apologize if I'm not mentioning people, but there was a lot of people that came out, and we did that along 14th Street to all the way to 27th Street. So block those streets, and there was a lot of vendors that came out, line up along Telegraph, line up along Broadway. So we did that. Was a lot of colors. So from there, something came up that was called pop-up hood. So it was run by two of my friends, Sarah and Alfonso. So they were able to connect with landlords, and they started doing pop-ups. So we started doing pop-ups all over the place. So my brand at the time, Suru become that, because of the diversity of Oakland, it really became that city, something that people were looking like, wow, I can vibe with it. So we started doing a lot of pop-ups. So I started popping up. I pop up in Old Oakland. There was a friend, Terreny Allen, had a sneaker shop called Verse. All the young cool cats goes there. Some people find out that people are buying sneakers now for $2,000. Back then, it was you hear sneaker cost $700. Everybody was like, "What the hell?" And there was all those, different type of sneakers. I think October Red, the Red October. Somebody brought it out, it was $1,200, and people would come just to look at it. There was all this crazy, the Heineken, the SB Heineken.
I think I saw someone resell this for $15,000.
Oh yeah, I have that. No, I'm not reselling it. But I say that to say, pretty much Oakland has been here, and as somebody that I've lived here now for 26 years, I feel like Oakland always have this tendency of going up and down, and I think a lot of that stem from the city hall. Yeah. So I don't want to get carried away, but what's the other part?
So did you tell us the origin story of Mushin?
So Mushin, actually, so now that's Suru. So I start doing pop-up. Suru become a space actually for a lot of young people, like people from OSA, Oakland School for the Heart, come there. There's a lot of kids that got their first start coming there, interning for me. The radio, the youth radio.
Did you have like consignment or like?
Yeah, I did have a consignment. I did that, and we turned into it's called a Suru Marketplace. Yeah. We have 3 different brands. Mixed Fit was one of them. Run the World was one of them.
I was wearing my Run the World pants on the last podcast video.
Oh wow!
Love them.
Yeah. Victor is my boy. Him and his team. That story was crazy on his own because Victor used to wear suits. He was in Cal, and he would come to the shop and just sit there. I didn't know he was just looking at how things are run. I love that man. I love his approach to business. Like he really was learning. He was watching, from what he said, he was watching us operate. Suru is owned by me and Mohammed at the time. And he was watching us, he would just come by. He was watching us, seeing what we're doing. And all of a sudden, the approach was like, you know what, I want to do this. What do you think? I didn't discourage him, even though he's coming to my industry. I'm like, yeah, man, the more the merrier, because competition is good. It makes me want to do more. And I'm that type of a person. I want to be challenged. If I'm not challenged, it's just easy. I hate things to be easy. So he came on board, massively changed the game in his own capacity. So we were, there was also a brand, I think it was owned by 19 Keys, that was in the space also. And we shut down Suru because of pandemic. Yeah. And I was focusing on, Mushin. So my whole idea was, before I go, so we transitioned from marketplace to barbershop because, of course, everybody build their brand and they move on. So we turned into a barbershop and a sneaker shop, and Christian was running it at the time, and I was going to leave that to Christian. It was called Studio. It was going to be Studio Suru that was going to exist in that space.
Moved Studio to like the
Grand Lake side. To the Grand Lake side, because when pandemic happened, talking to, of course, landlord need to pay their mortgage. Yeah. And we were not operating, so we have to close it. And I was already focusing on Mushin. So moving to Mushin, I got the lease for Mushin in 2019, and we were going to open in 2020. And we actually put a starting date, April 20th, I think. We were going to open during Super Bowl, whatever the Super Bowl, I think it was 18 or something. Then we were going to open during Super Bowl. And pandemic happened in March.
Yeah, Super Bowl was February. So.
And it was like a shutdown. And it was, I think that, honestly, that's where my gray started growing. Because we buried so much money into Mushin at the time. The project was going to cost us about 1.2 million. But I was able to do things a lot different. And we saved almost, I think, $400,000 by doing it on our own, doing the design, being the project manager. Will bring it a little over $800K, but it was intense because there was pandemic, and we have to deal with the city. We have to build only one. I mean, that's one of the things that Oakland got wrong, the way we move back into after pandemic, because us as a new business, they release, you can only be 25% of your capacity. It was dumb because the reality is nobody can operate at 20%, 25% capacity, still pay full rent and pay employees.
And pay yourself.
And you forget about paying yourself. So they did that, and there's this thing called, you can have parklet outside of but the reality is also, for me, people do have parklet. I didn't like it because it's an additional work from the kitchen or from the bar to outside. But City Hall doesn't factor all of that. No matter how much, the fact that no matter how much you make it, you cannot make enough to cover, because you cannot make enough to cover. It's just that simple. It was fun. It was fun to have that, but it's not it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And that's why we see everything getting ripped out now, because it become a eyesore. It become a space for homeless to stay, you know. So that wasn't well executed, to be quite honest with you. What we need back then was money. Yeah. And engaging the landlords. If City Hall had engaged the landlord and say, yo, this is what's happening, this is how we get you back in the back end. No rent for, I mean, a lot of us, to be frank, we owe a lot of rent to our landlords.
Yeah.
And it's not fair, to be quite honest, because they have to pay their mortgage too. Yeah. I know a lot of people like to say, oh, landlord is this. You have to understand that it's a business. Yeah. And they answer to big banks that don't care. So we need to always understand that. So, so Mushin, it's a city that I was born and raised. In Japanese, it means a mind without a mind. And in my culture, it means it's a fruit. It means to pick ake, it's a fruit. So I just felt like I want to bring my city to Oakland.
Oh,
so aside from being an entrepreneur, what other roles in your life hold significance?
Being a father. Yeah. I think that's the greatest. My daughter is, by the way, 10-year-old today. Yeah. Funny enough, I've always known I want to be a father since I was in high school. And a name in particular, I've always known that I want to call my daughter Kofo Worola Fully, since I was in high school. So having a daughter first was like, and the crazy part, nowadays you can tell what gender. I'd say I didn't want to know. I wanted to be a surprise. And when I saw, when she came, I knew it was a girl, and I was so happy. So being a father holds significance. And the reason why is because, and I tell that to all my friends now, we are raising the next generation of Oakland. Yeah. So anybody that's raising kids in Oakland, you are raising the next generation. So however you raise them, that's the identity of the city. Yeah. So we are actually, and I want anyone raising kids, you want them to be able to go somewhere and come back to the city. But if we keep running the city like we're running it, they're not going to come back, because they move to New York, or they move to Chicago, or they move to London, or they move to Canada, and they're like, oh, this is vibing here, then back home. I'm not coming back home. Yeah. So we have to understand that. This is how transplants happen. If there's an opportunity there, the reason why people came to the Bay is because San Francisco have an opportunity for tech, and they come. Yeah. And the sad part is, I don't believe that Oakland really position itself to harness, to take part of that. And that will only happen if we start seeing San Francisco as a competition. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We are, but square feet wise, we're bigger than San Francisco.
Yes. So
until we start seeing San Francisco and San Jose, the Silicon Valley, as a competition, do we actually step up to try to tap into that? Say, hey, Salesforce, why are you building that over there? Come build it in Oakland. Mm-hmm. Or is it Oracle? Or like we have to start the next Oracle, like Airbnb. All those people, Twitter, Uber, all of those people, we had the opportunity to bring them here. Yeah. But there was nobody really focusing on that. Yeah. It just left them be. Because I would argue that when we knew that we're focusing on hedge fund and seeing who they invested in, and telling them from real estate standpoint and say, look, we want you to come to Oakland. We'll give you net zero. Yeah. Just pay the triple net. Come here. They can tell investors like, look, we don't have to pay rent. The city of Oakland is telling us to come. Because the way the city get it back is from that employee tax. When the employee goes out and spend their money. If a large of them start coming here, but we never put, in my opinion, again, that's from the little that I know. I'm not saying that's what really transpired, but we can see from the evidence. Yeah. Some of them, they will say, oh yeah, they try to come here, but they don't really want to come here. But guess what? You didn't position yourself to be attractive anyway. Yeah. I could have predicted that, what do you call it? The Warriors was going to leave. There was a particular, I'm not going to name them, but there was a particular interview that I saw between the San Francisco mayor and the Oakland mayor that I'm like, we're going to lose things. So we have to understand that we need to start thinking about 10 years from now, where do we want Oakland to be? Yeah. And I think it's reflective of how we play our politics. We always think in 2 years, 3 years. It's like we're not really building for the future. So we need to start thinking about that. So.
Yeah. And then the next question would be, what are some challenges Oakland is currently facing, and what are your hopes for Oakland's future?
I mean, the biggest challenge right now is, they would say it's homelessness, but I would say homelessness is actually a byproduct of the lack of businesses.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people like to jump on the homelessness because it's hot. Of course, yes, safety, because it's hot. But as a metropolitan city, there was always going to be crime is always going to be there.
Yeah.
It's about shrinking it to acceptable rate. Do you think people don't pickpocket in New York? Do you see that on the headline? Do you think people don't get mugged in New York? Or, you know, or San Francisco? Oakland get more rap about what goes on here than San Francisco does.
Yeah.
So for me, the only way you counter that is ensuring that business is moving as usual. There's opportunity, endless opportunity. I will tell you this, the fact that the Warriors and Raiders and now Ace is leaving, do you understand the economic detrimental that happened in East Oakland?
Right.
I always tell people just once a week that the Raiders play in the Coliseum feed a family for a month because of the hustle.
Yeah.
We need to understand that.
Right.
That's what it is. Those are economy that the world leaders understand and they let it happen. You know what I mean? We talk about legal migrant. Do you think the United States doesn't know there's legal migrant here? Do you think they don't know they contribute to the economy?
Right.
Yeah.
So when you see the Coliseum the way it is, you look at the Eckenberger leading to the airport, like there's no reason why that should be like that.
Yeah.
So you have to ask the city hall, like, we're not doing our due diligence to ensure that there's endless opportunity. So that's one. We have a seaport, the fourth busiest seaport in the United States. I ship stuff from China, from India, from Turkey. I do that. I'm into that. So many times I have to get a ship that's going to LA before they come here. For whatever reason, you know? So there's all these things that we need to really zero in when it comes to business.
Sure.
Trust me, by nature, Oakland is a metropolitan city. It's not a town.
Yeah.
Okay? Look at it. Look at the amazing view that we have. We are city by the bay. So by nature, we have the biggest in the East Bay. There's about 14 cities in the East Bay. So we are the anchor. When people in Pleasanton, people in Walnut Creek, people in Richmond, when they say they go into the city, this is the city they should be coming to.
Yeah.
But we need to position ourselves to harness that opportunity. So for me, going back to the question, I think that's where the opportunity lies. Can you repeat that question again? There's a second part.
This one is, what are some challenges Oakland is currently facing? And what are your hopes for Oakland's future?
So like I was saying, it's easy to point out the safety, it's easy to point out the homelessness. But I think the business sustainability is the biggest challenge that we're facing. It's the biggest.
Yeah.
Think the engine that really drives.
It's just that simple. Think about it now. Kaiser, that has been the jewel of Oakland, is leaving. They're moving their headquarters, right? And the counter would be, oh, but PG&E is coming here. I'm like, F that. PG&E serves how many households, right? Compared to Kaiser that serves everybody, right? That's a national brand. Clorox. So I call them the legacy company. Ask.com used to be here. I don't think Blue Shield, you know?
All right.
So when you start looking at it like Kaiser, Blue Shield, we are prideful about our healthcare industry, right?
Sure.
To me, if that's what we're going to lead with, then let's double down and zero down on that. There's no reason why Kaiser should be leaving.
Where's Kaiser going?
I think they're going somewhere in Pleasanton or Pleasant Hill or Concord, around that area, inland. They're going inland. I think their building is even sold already. So one of the things that I believe is this, it's a bad relationship between the city hall and this kind of company.
Yeah.
Every mayor, every city council member that run this district, a mayor, should have a direct call. Hey, I'm the new mayor, I'm the new city hall, I'm this new city council. What can I do to make sure that your employee feel safe, blah, 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 blah. That's part of the PR we're talking about. Ensuring that we're getting ahead of problem. Because the reality, during my campaign, I always said, you cannot get ahead of something you never control.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we didn't control the sports space and the left. We're not controlling this healthcare corporations, and they're gonna leave. Do you think it takes anything for Blue Shield to tomorrow to say, you know what, we're gonna leave? They build that building, they could sell it and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
To them, because these people at that level, when you're dealing with the billions, you move economy. So yeah, they could do whatever the hell they want to do. We as a city, and I think that's the unfortunate part, the local small government always position themselves. Like, we have to use the tools that we have to get what we need. So the challenges for me, and that's what I campaign on, I think is the lack of business sustainability. It's the biggest challenge that Oakland faces. Mom and pop businesses are struggling, and we need the big company to feed us so that we can thrive. Because, like I said earlier, 80% of the businesses that in Oakland are in this district. So you can always imagine how many people also that we hire that come to here to work. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So we need to prioritize that. And if we prioritize that, I think it was 2020, it's called the SAP, Strategic Action Plan, that was done by the former mayor, Libby Shah. And they said 58% of the people that are homeless said is because they did not have fund, they did not have money. And that happened because they lost their jobs. Mm-hmm. Because when you look at the restaurants, and when we look at the restaurant, I'm not just talking about the restaurant, but the building. This building is business. Yeah. It's a residential, but it's a business. A restaurant in the building, that building also is a business. Yeah. Right? So when those shops, when those businesses close, that means those people lose the opportunity to play. So they lose their homes. People I don't want people to do it, but people would rather work 2-3 jobs to put a roof over their head than be homeless. Yeah. A lot of people will always say, oh, pounce on, the mental illness, or they're on drugs. That happened because they could not take care of themselves. Yes. Yeah. Because I have 3 friends that went homeless. I went to school with one of the smartest guy when we were in Lenny College. When I saw him, I was like, he was on the encampment by Eric J. Kaiser, and he was walking out of there, and I was riding my bike. I'm like, what the hell? What's going on? He's like, yeah, man, he had a little E&J bottle. This is somebody that I know, he was a teacher. Because and they start giving me how hard it is to be in the school system in Oakland, how the kids don't respect them, how one of them actually smashed his head and I saw his stitches, like all the. So you can imagine somebody, I know this person, I know he's book smart. Yeah. Yeah. So now, lost his job, start drinking, and of course, so we have to understand the bigger problem is when people can't take care of themselves, when they cannot pay for things, mental health start dwindling. Mm-hmm. It's the reality. But everybody want to climb like, the people homeless or they're on drugs. We have to ask what got them there. Yeah. Mental health is real, but we need to check on what got people there. If the market in New York crashed today, a lot of wealthy people will turn to cocaine and whatever they use to numb themselves of what they've lost. Yeah. And luckily for them, they will get back because they get a lot of helps. Mm-hmm. The same thing is people, middle class or low income people. When one restaurant closes, say I'm a bartender and I have 3 bars that I work for. Sure. Trust me, with cheap and everything, they can make anywhere from $30 to $45 an hour, right? And they have 3 of those going for them. They work one there, they work one here. If one close, the second one close, that's 2 incomes that they're able to upkeep their livelihood. They can't live. Nobody. We all know this. You can people. Everyone have a side hustle. How many people can really live on one income, right? So the same thing with all these people. So when you start seeing place shut down, it affects. When big business close, it's going to affect the small businesses. When small businesses close, it's going to affect the individuals. Yeah. That's a trickle effect. So, and when you look at that same SAP report that I talk about, mental health was drug abuse or violence. They're all like 15, 16, 12% of what creates homelessness. 58% of them is lack of money. So again, I will go back. The biggest challenge that this city faces is business sustainability. Business are not sustainable in Oakland. I was talking to a friend. I've been in downtown since 2013, so that's over 20 years now, right? I'm looking at people that I know has been trying to make it. Yeah. And we're all struggling. Mm-hmm. When I look at my counterpart in LA, in New York, in Atlanta, I'm like, it's different. I'm happy I just love grinding, but there's so much that we're not doing as people that are building in Oakland. Yeah. So I think the biggest challenge is still business sustainability. I know some people will be like, homelessness, da, da, da. I think if we take care of that, we take care of a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
That's it?
No.
That's not it. We have a rapid fire. Yeah.
Oh, rapid?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fun stuff.
Fire away.
All right. Your Oakland staples, favorite. I guess you don't really drink coffee or anything like that, but your favorite restaurants, bars, coffee shops.
Just a quick aside. Are you caffeine free?
I'm caffeine free. I'm alcohol free. I'm tobacco free.
Caffeine free?
Everything free.
Everything free. Yeah. I live free.
Any substance.
Love that.
So what are some of your staples? Just
my staples, the Oakland Museum. Mm-hmm. There's a staple. Me and my kids goes there a lot. I eat a lot of Mushin. So I to root Pukai a lot because my mom used to do the cooking, but unfortunately, I lost that beautiful woman. So I go to root Pukai a lot. And if I don't, there's a Thai chow on Lakeshore. That's my spot. Me and my kids go there at least once a month. I go there frequently. Hans Burger. Hans? Yeah. On Grove Avenue, it's another good spot. That's it. Yeah.
All right, last rapid fire question. How would you describe Oakland in just 3 words?
Resilient, creative, and rich.
Love that.